Bob Myers moving away from this team. Do you think he moved away? And maybe this is a loaded question for you, and that's unfair. So maybe I won't phrase it that way. But how do you think he would have handled this offseason in regards to what's going on with the Golden State Warriors?
It's interesting you bring that up. Walk with me down the path. Let's hold hands. We'll walk. Okay?
Sure.
We'll enjoy
Beautiful
it.
Again, outside.
Right.
Yeah.
I believe in timing in life, right? Sometimes it's just dumb luck. Sometimes it's strategic. But timing is everything in life.
Kevin Durant.
When my wife and I were saving up for homes, we saved up forever. Okay, we went nowhere for years. And we were on the market for multiple years hunting for homes. And boom, the right time, the right place after getting rejected. I'm not kidding, close to 50 times. We lost out on like 50 bids.
Man.
We ended up getting a home here in San Francisco. Let's say we would have been looking a year later, year and a half, 2 years later. I'm convinced that I would have probably moved out of like much farther out of the region.
Totally.
Because I wouldn't have been able to afford it because home prices just exploded. Okay? Absolutely exploded. So I am the beneficiary of the timing and us executing that timing. By dumb luck, by not, winning certain bids and this, that, and the other, we ended up getting a great house that we absolutely love. Is it perfect? No. But it's much better because I look back at some of the houses that we didn't win. Joe, I would have been in a one-bedroom house with no driveway and paying up the wazoo.
Totally.
I would have been regretting it. I look at when Harbaugh came to the Niners. Boy, the timing was just right. Yeah. Boy, he had all this talent he could inherit. They just needed the right coach to be able to turn the cylinders. And I think he left with good timing because the bottom kind of fell out on the roster. Everybody retired at the same time. When Bob Myers was going to leave the Warriors, I initially thought my best guess was, man, I think that he wanted to stay with the core because he's so loyal to them, and he didn't have the guts to maybe go through a change. And that's what I was thinking. Like, he's too loyal to Draymond and Klay Thompson and Steph Curry. And he needs to go for a variety of reasons, but one of the big ones was maybe he didn't want to have to do that.
Yeah.
He disagreed with ownership. Now, with all the roster moves and the undoing of all of his draft picks, and seeing the extension with Draymond Green and the drama and everything like that, I'm purely speculating. But boy, it sure feels to me like Bob got out at a perfect time because he doesn't have to be involved with any of this drama. And maybe, just maybe, there were deep philosophical disconnections between ownership, the coach, and the GM regarding roster construction, regarding loyalty to the core. And I really wonder if Bob Myers didn't want to make the tough decision to move off of Dre or Klay or all of them and go younger. Because, boy, if you look at the roster he put together the last couple years, it sure felt like they were trying to transition.
Yeah.
It sure felt like they were trying to, wiggle in a new era. And it feels like they've undone all of that in a month.
888-957-9570 is the number. Talking Draymond Green, talking the Pat Bev podcast. If you haven't heard it, Draymond Green sat down with Patrick Beverley on his podcast. Had a lot to say in regards to, Jordan Poole, that situation. He also was talking about Chris Paul and CP3. We're going to play some of that sound here in a second and also go to your phones here at 888-957-9570. And shout out to the YouTube and Twitch streams. Search 95.7 The Game, like, subscribe, ring that bell is what we like to say. Ring the bell, subscribe here, and like the daily videos. We appreciate all of you guys chiming in throughout the day here on 95.7 The Game. But here's Draymond Green, who again sat down with Patrick Beverley, talking about the addition and the differences he has with Chris Paul. Take a listen.
Me and Chris have had our differences, over the course of my 11 years playing in this league since year one. Chris is the way he is. I am the way I am. He not changing who he is at this point. I'm not changing who I am at this point. And I think it's very important for people to understand that. Like the same sentiments I had about Chris, like they don't just leave, and the same sentiments Chris had about me, like they don't just leave. And I think that's where people get things so up. It's like all of a sudden you got to fake this thing or fake that thing. No, what I've always respected about Chris is his tenacity, his will to win, like his competitiveness. And now I have an opportunity to be alongside that. Like
when you heard that, give you a little slight pause, Joe, that this is going to turn out okay, him and CP3 on the same team? Or were you skeptical before the trade or after the trade even happened?
I believe there's going to be some creative tension at some point this year. The reality is can they coexist in a work environment and win games? That's what they're going to be judged on, right? If they're winning games, even if they're screaming and yelling at each other, which I doubt, but even if they're screaming and yelling at each other, if they're winning games, it'll be like, look at these two. Look at the fire to win. You know, like when Tom Brady's winning and screaming at teammates on the sideline, it looks a lot different than when Kyler Murray is screaming at teammates and they're losing.
Yeah, because it looks like, wow, what a leader there.
Exactly.
And then, what a terrible leader on the other side.
I'm skeptical they can get along, though.
I'm not skeptical of my guy Sauce in Oakland because he wants to chime in about Draymond Green.
I do love Sauce.
Sauce Gardner? What's going on, Sauce?
Hey,
You're
Sauce.
on 95.7 The Game.
Not Sauce Gardner, Sauce Fowler.
Okay. What up?
Okay. No, I just want to say that Draymond is feeling guilty. See, as a leader, you're supposed to lead by example, not lead by violence. Now, my son and I, we were watching the video on the whole fiasco, and actually Draymond put his shoulder into Jordan Poole's chin. So when Jordan Poole pushed him away, then Draymond hit him. So, and actually, Draymond initiated the whole thing. But Draymond has been feeling guilty because Jordan Poole has not commented on what was said and what transpired. Now, I just want to say, as a basketball player, as a basketball player, former basketball player, you trash talk each other on the court. Now, when Draymond said that Jordan Poole said some things that wasn't supposed to be said, well, Gary Payton said some egregious things on the court that, oh my God, you can't even repeat on the airway. So that has always been part of basketball. Shaq has always said the best way to get at someone is to touch them up on the court. Not punch them during practice, but while you scrimmage and whatever, and then as he's coming to the hole, you touch him up. So there was a different kind of way Draymond could have handled it. My whole thing is Draymond threw the whole championship season away because the way Jordan Poole gave us a pool party, we was ready to have another pool party. That pool party had the Bay Area excited. Jordan Poole was ready to take it to another level. Now we became an ego nursery team because when you remember when Iguodala agreed to come off the bench, who had a bigger ego than Iguodala coming from Denver? Iguodala was one of the premier guards in the league. So he put his ego to the side so that the team could grow. So we stopped evolving. When we stop evolving is when our championship has stunted. And Draymond stunted our championship growth last year.
Yeah.
Appreciate the chime in there, Sauce from Oakland.
It's very interesting. Like I'm watching in real time the evolution of Warrior fans, and social media has really, I don't know if it's diluted, but it's definitely highlighted a lot of my vision of fans now, because it's not just my circle. I get to see lots of circles.
Yes.
And not everyone's on social media, so I don't know how accurate of a representation it is of the fan base. I was a Warrior fan before the championships, like way before.
Yeah.
My favorite player of all time was Chris Mullin.
There you go.
Chris Mullin did not finish a Warrior. I wanted him to, but he didn't.
He's a pacer.
All my favorite Warriors didn't finish Warriors. Spreewell was traded. Hardaway was traded. I loved Weber at one time. He was traded.
Man, sounds like you were an A's fan with the Warriors back then.
Baron Davis left us in free agency. Jason Richardson was traded. You know, these are all my favorite. Gilbert Arenas left us, right? So maybe I view it through a different prism. I admit that. You know, if you're a 20-something-year-old Warrior fan, you know, like Evan Giddings, like I watch the way he watches the Warriors, and I'm like, you don't even understand what it was like. And I'm not knocking him. How could he? He wasn't alive. I don't think you understand what it's like watching these Warriors. So when you see Draymond and Steph and Clay, you get a lot of the younger fans like, they should be Warriors for life. And I'm like, yeah, that's not how sports works.
No.
You know, Reggie Millers are unique.
Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback and maybe greatest player in the history of football, didn't finish a Patriot.
Right?
Well, I would kind of push back on that because, like, like you, Shesky, like I grew up a longtime Warrior fan. I've been going to these games since I was like 5, 6 years old. And you're saying Noah can stay a Warrior forever. Noah can be with the team forever. I feel like that's the old era Warriors, the this day and suck Warriors, the Chris Cohen era Warriors. And I get this whole feeling, and maybe this is wrong of me to hold the Warriors to this expectation that I think Joe Lacob said when he said the light years ahead comment, like that whole like guys can't stay the whole time. I feel like that should be the old thinking nowadays. Like guys like Steph, Clay, I guess Draymond too. I think there's nothing wrong with Warrior fans looking at this team, that this organization, be like, yeah, they should be lifetime Warriors now because that's the new era that we have created here at Warriors basketball. The old era of bad things happen, guys just leave. Like at what point I think it's fair if you're a Warrior fan to be like, you know what, I want to leave that era behind and really plant the flag in this new era that this is different than what we grew up with.
I hear what you're saying. It's also like you're totally not acknowledging that these guys all want to get paid the maximum amount of money, and with the salary cap being as restrictive as it is, it just makes it really difficult. And then if you look at the history of the game, how many teams did Kareem play on?
2.
Yeah, Magic played on 1, right? But those 2 played together on the team. Kobe played on 1 team.
Dirk,
all right?
Dirk, 1 team.
Okay. But those are few and far between. We're talking about a handful of guys. Even as great as the Spurs dynasty was, okay, Duncan took big pay cuts to stay. Ginobili took pay cuts to stay.
Tony Parker was a Hornet.
No one remembers that.
No.
Right? Nobody remembers that. Dwayne Wade left the Heat for crying out loud.
A couple teams. Well, he's a Cav, a Bull. Yeah, it's like no one remembers those, though. It's just, come on.
So I guess where I'm going at is that I've just, with my sports fandom, have been so accustomed to very, very few of your favorite players of all time get to stay with the team all the way through. Joe Montana went to the Chiefs. Ronnie Lott, Raiders and Jets. Roger Craig went to the Vikings. Jerry Rice went to the Raiders. Yeah, I could just go down the list.
And a Seahawk and a Bronco.
I know, like, very few do what Buster Posey did. And even Buster kind of cut it short at the end.
It's a dying breed for sure.
It's a rarefied thing.
And it's microscoped by 3 too. Like that doesn't happen. 3 guys.
That's kind of my point. I see a lot of Warrior fans ride or die for life. The reality is like, okay, 4 years from now, Draymond, let's just say hypothetically, Draymond wants another $20 million contract and thinks that he should be starting. I don't know. It might be time to, call it. They might not retire Warriors.
All right, we're good to go. Bye.
That's exactly what I'm saying at that point.
What I'm getting at is that you can't have everything you want all the time. And sometimes what you want as a fan or what you want as an organization doesn't line up with what others want. The Niners wanted to keep Jerry Rice. Yeah. He didn't want to play for the Niners anymore. They didn't want to pay him X. He wanted a bigger role. He left.
Yeah.
Ripped our souls out.
Yeah.
You know how hard it was for me to see Jerry Rice in a Raider uniform?
And instant success, too, over there. Yes.
Jerry Rice in a Raider uniform?
Hey.
I watched Chris Mullin, even though our team wasn't, compete for a championship with the Pacers?
Hey, that cover of Jerry Rice and Tim Brown, though, on the cover, I think it was a Sports Illustrated or ESPN magazine. It was freaking hard. Jerry at the cornrows, it looks pretty sick.
My setting as a sports fan is always, dude, you're not going to get everything you want. Very rarely does a guy play their entire career for you. Frank Gore is one of my favorite football players ever. How many teams did Frank play for at the end there? I mean, it was ridiculous.
Jets. He was almost a Raider at one point. He thought about it. Jets
Colts.
for sure. Colts, Dolphins.
Buffalo Bills.
Bills.
I mean, he was all over the place.
He's a Hall of Famer, but yes.
Of course.
But everyone's going to remember
And I love him.
Emmitt Smith was a Cardinal, wasn't he?
I just think that at some level, there are a segment of Warrior fans, and not all of them, but there's a segment of Warrior fans that are just unrealistic.
Yeah.
And unrealistic about winning championships forever, unrealistic about keeping this thing together forever, unrealistic in how dynasties end, which is with a thudding crash.
You know who's not?